Good evening. How are you all doing? I know we're a couple of minutes early, so we'll hang around and wait for a few minutes and let people come on and join us. You know, what a beautiful day it was today. But you know, I don't like getting phone calls asking me if I have been to Chicago when I've been sitting right here in Axtell, Kansas, you know, doing church work. I was home all day. But I'm glad that my bank called and said, hey, I think there's a problem. Were you in Chicago? No, I was not. So, that's okay. They're going to take care of and reverse all the charges. And I hate the fact people have time or think they have time to go do that. That to me is just so wrong. But I guess, unfortunately, in many ways, it is the world we live in, isn't it? It is the world that is not nice, I guess is the way to say that. Not good, not fair. And it is a world that is hurting. And I think that that's what we need to remember, is that it is a hurting world. But, you know, what I know is that our God is gracious and He is good. And He is here for you and me at all times. And so I give thanks for that. And we are just excited that there are people coming on and taking part in a study and wanting to know more. You know, as I've done Daniel, there are some things that we're going to come across. I'm not sure how far we'll get into it tonight that are just, I just was blown away. Blown away by some parallels to our culture today. And I find that totally fascinating, that how biblically 2,000 years ago and today our stories are so much the same at times. And they are. Let's go ahead and let's begin with prayer. Heavenly Father, we do give you thanks for tonight. We give you thanks for seasons changing and longer daylight, warmer temperatures, flowers beginning to at least come out of the ground, and depending on where you are, some blooming already. But God, we just give you thanks for who we are as your people and as your children. And so be with us tonight as we continue our study in Daniel, that hopefully it will impact us and force us to look at our lives and our world and see what can we do to make things different. We ask this in your name. Amen. Chapter 10, verse 15 is where we will begin tonight. Again, it was a busy weekend for Ron and me. We were in Kansas City. In Kansas City, the tulips are blooming, the daffodils are blooming, the magnolia trees are starting to bloom. It was amazing to see all the flowers. And then yesterday we were in Lynchburg, Kansas, and again, things are blooming already. I mean, it was just, you just kind of went just to go a little bit further south and things are blooming. Things are green. The buds are starting to come on the trees. The tulips are up. The iris are up, or they're coming up. And God is good. So, okay, chapter 10, verse 15. Let's start with reading here. While he was speaking these words to me, okay, remember who's talking here. We have an angel. This is probably, this is probably Gabriel who is speaking right now, that's going on in this conversation. And he is trying to help him look at and prepare for what the visions are that he will have. So, while he was speaking these words to me, I turned my face towards the ground and was speechless. he was humbled. He was laying prostrate, probably, which means face down. He was not, no, wait a minute, this may have been Michael. This was probably Michael. I apologize. I just happened to look up. It's Michael who is speaking here. And he really was speechless. And I think we would be too. I know I have sensed when God is present. I mean, he's present all the time. But when there is something profound he's trying to tell me, words get in the way. Or actually, I can't even say them. Because there is that humbleness and that holiness, that moment of awe, if nothing else. Okay, verse 16. Then one in human form touched my lips, and I opened my mouth to speak and said to the one who stood before me, my Lord, because of the visions, such pains have come upon me, I retain no strength. The holy presence of God was upon him. As, you know, and I think about the coals being put on the lips in Ezekiel. I think of the holy presence of the angels in Revelation and how those words, but yet he touched his lips and he opened his mouth. My Lord, because of the vision, such pains have come upon me that I have no strength. I retain no strength because it is so profound. I have melted into that holiness, into the holy presence, maybe. Maybe at times we should be in awe more often. Maybe we should pause. I know Wednesday night, there was a moment as we were doing the dialogue on the spear, that as I held that spear, there was almost a sense and a presence of. And as I heard that dialogue, as David and I did that dialogue back and forth, there was a holiness, a holy presence that I felt that just encompassed everything. It gave pause to the moments. It did stop me. And as I stood looking at the cross, there was wonderment about what is Lent. What is this journey we're on? Where is it taking us? How do we move forward in it? I think that's the awe that Daniel has at this moment. Verse 17. How can my Lord's servant talk with my Lord? For I am shaking, no strength in me, and no breath is left in me. What Daniel understands is that his strength comes from the Lord. For you and me, our strength comes from him. We are to be in awe of that presence and allow the strength to pulse through us so that we are touched by this living God, this one who is present. Verse 18, and again in human form, one in human form touched me and strengthened me. And he said, do not fear. There's that do not fear. Remember, it's there 365 times. 365 times we're reminded, do not fear. Greatly beloved, and you are safe. Be strong and courageous. When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, let my Lord speak, for you have strengthened me. This is the third time that it's been said. Third time to be strong and courageous. Daniel is going to hear this. Now remember, when we think about 3, we always think about that Trinity. It is a holy number. It is wholeness and completeness. It is of the 3 coming to 1. I love the words be strong and courageous. In a world that we live in now, it is time for you and me to be strong and courageous. That's why I posted on Facebook with my picture this morning about, can we roar through our lives like Daniel? Can we have the strength of a lion? Can we be strong and courageous in how we share the story, the passion? And if we're not passionate about it, then why do we do it? Anyone can go about and say, oh yeah, I go to church. But if we're passionate, we give it our all for everything we do. That even means sometimes maybe being a little silly. Sometimes it means picking ourselves up. Sometimes it means putting us on the ground to serve another. Okay, verse 20. Then he said, do you know why I have come to you? Now I must return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I am through with him, the prince of Greece will come. Okay, so Michael is here temporarily with Daniel, but he has another mission he has to go on. He has to go back to Persia to be with the prince of Persia. And when I am through with him, the prince of Greece will come. There is foretelling of what battles are going to be fought. The rest of Daniel is, at least what I've studied up through now, through a ways into 11, is we've got conflicts back and forth and battles and fights and spiritual as well as landmass. It's going to be interesting. What we need to remember is that God fights the battles for his children. God sets up kingdoms and he will bring them down. You know, sometimes I think we think that maybe that God's slow to answer prayer. I don't think he's slow to answer prayer. I think often he's readying the people, you and me, to hear the answer. Even if it may be yes, it may be no, it may be later, but I have to prepare you for what will come. Maybe it's about the heavenly warfare that's playing out in our world and in our surroundings and in our midst. Maybe it feels like a very long time for prayers. But on the other hand, it may be very short. You know, I think back to being a little girl. And especially when we were anxious to get to wherever we were going, especially to go to Grandma and Grandpa's if my cousins were going to be there and we were going to get to all play together. It seemed like it took forever to get in the car and to get there. And it seemed like the time there was so short. And yet it may have been all day. You remember those times. It's the going back and realizing, no, it really wasn't that amount of time. God does answer the prayers. Let's go on to verse 21. But I am to tell you what is inscribed in the book of truth. Okay, the book of truth is God's plan being revealed as he wants. He wants, not what we want. You know, I always say, my calendar is a disaster because I put things on there and they don't happen. Or I think I have my week planned and it all gets changed. And so my calendar, much as my Bible, is scritched and scratched. It is marked. It is, well, here's a sample. Okay. This is just one little sample. And notice, well, one, I have to color code everything. And then you see there's arrows and there's tape. There's whiteout. There's things crossed out. There's things moved. Arrows. Oh, my goodness. Isn't that what life is? That's what it is. Because it's God's plan. And if we let God be in control of that plan, we will make changes, even when we don't want to. When we don't think we want to. Anyway, okay, let's go on. There is no one with me who contends against these princes except Michael, your prince. So Michael is the archangel associated with Jesus. This is where it's confusing. Now I say that I thought that was Michael. I don't think so. I think it was Gabriel that had been doing this conversation. And it's Michael who was going to deal with the princes. And so Gabriel was the one talking to Daniel. Okay, I said that. I said it right, then I changed my mind, and I think I have to go back, that it was Gabriel, and he's now saying that Michael has to deal with him. Because Michael is that archangel that is associated with Jesus. Okay, verse 11. The big numbers are chapters, so it would be chapter 11. Okay, verse 1. As for me, in the first year of Darius the Mede, I stood up to support and strengthen him. This is the beginning of what he was to understand. Okay, this is Daniel now, and this is the beginning of what he is now to understand. What we know is that for at least the rest of chapter 11, it is the prophecy from the history of a spiritual conflict in Israel. Okay? And so we're going to hear that. And especially in verses 2 to 35. And then about the tribulation in verses 36 to 42. Michael is going to aid in the delivery of Israel as we get to chapter 12. This really is looking at it from Daniel's time to the final Antichrist. There are some things in here in understanding this, I think, that get us a little bit, and it depends on which resource you look at. But that's how I could make sense of it. Really, the verses 2 to 35 really are at the time frame of the fulfillment of the Persian kingdom and the reign of Greece through Antiochus Epiphanes. So this is about the Persian kingdom, or near the fulfillment of the Persian kingdom. So let's look at verse 2. Now I will announce the truth to you. 3 more kings shall arise in Persia. The 4th shall be far richer than all of them. And when he has become strong through his riches, he shall stir up all against the kingdom of Greece. So The three kings who will reign after Babylon was taken by Cyrus. Okay? So we have Cambyses was reigned from 530 to 522 BC. Then we had Pseudo-Smyrtis in just 522 BC. Obviously, being a king probably cost you your life. And so sometimes they didn't last very long. Then we have Darius the First, his Topes, from 522 to 486. The last one, the fourth one, is Xerxes the First. This is the one that Esther would have been under and lived under in that time frame. So again, isn't it interesting? Now we've had Esther, and now she comes up again. And he would have been in reign from 486 to 465. There were no kings after this because of the failed military campaigns against the Greeks. And it was the beginning of the end of Persia, which fell in 331 BC. And it fell to Alexander the Great, is who it fell to. So let's look at verse 3. Then a warrior king, this is Alexander the Great, shall arise, who shall rule with great dominion and take action as he pleases. That's Alexander the Great. Verse 4. And, I always love it, and while still rising in power, his kingdom shall be broken and divided towards the four winds of heaven, but not to his posterity, nor according to the dominion with which he ruled. For his kingdom shall be uprooted and go to others besides these. So after Alexander the Great's death in 323 BC, 4 generals, not of his kin, took the land. And the fall begins to the fall begins to the Roman Empire. The king of the south is out of Egypt. And we're not going to know right now. We're not going to get into all 4. But the first one is, excuse me, the king of the south is Egypt. One of the princes out of there rose and overthrew him. So that didn't even last for very long. The king of the north is from Aram or Syria. Leaders tended to rule as they ruled, and they crossed and crisscrossed across Palestine. There should be no question when we get through understanding why is there still so much discontent over land in the Holy Land. The boundaries are still in question. Okay, let's go on to verse 5. Then the king of the south, who would have been Ptolemies, Ptolemies from Egypt, shall grow strong, but one of his officers shall grow stronger than he, and shall rule a realm greater than his own realm. Okay, so, wait a minute. Yeah, verse 5. Okay, this is south and north in relationship to Palestine. So if you have a map and you want to look, that's kind of what it is. Gabriel is concerned about this region. So he has some good reason to still be concerned about what's going on here. These verses 5 to 20, are a time frame of about 200 years. Represent about 200 years. Because of the war between the bordering powers, and it sounds familiar. It sounds like what's going on yet today between Palestine and Israel and the Gaza all of that region is still in conflict over. So this is a long period of time. I mean, war never was a short length of time. Verse 6. After some years they shall make an alliance, and the daughter of the king of the south shall come to the king of the north to ratify the agreement. But she shall not retain her power, and his offspring shall not endure. She shall be given up, she and her attendants, and her child, and the one who supported her. This is Seleucides from Syria, the king of Egypt. He's going up north. He wants to sign an agreement. Does this sound familiar? Even offers his daughter in marriage. It didn't work. Bernice, the daughter of Egypt's Ptolemy II, Philadelphus, who was 285 to 246 BC, she did marry Syria's king Antiochus II Theos. The hope was that there would be a political advantage because of the alliance. Well, it didn't work. It didn't work. Antiochus divorced his wife to marry Bernice. Okay, so we have a divorce and a marriage, but the divorced wife murdered Bernice and the baby's son and Antiochus by poison, and that brought her son, the one I can't say, Seleucides II Callineus, to the throne. They talk about murder, deceit. I mean, come on. Why did we think that would be anything new? Because it happened back in biblical times. I'm telling you, these people, I mean, and this was what can you say? And if we think our world is crazy, I guess maybe, it's already been seen, it's already been done. So it didn't work. Okay, so there was death. In those times, verse 7, a branch from her roots shall rise up in his place. He shall come against the army and enter the fortress of the king of the north, and he shall take action against them and prevail. Okay. Bernice's brother stood up in his father's place. So Ptolemy III Evergetes of Egypt, who was 246 to 222 BC, he conquered Syria and ransacked all their treasures and went to Egypt with them. Now, if you're confused, don't be thinking you're alone, because I have been totally confused in some of these names and who they are. I don't think that's not the key of the story. It is to understand. Remember, this is Daniel's vision of what is happening and what will happen in the land that he lives in. He is trying to continue to be faithful, and is faithful, and to lead his people so that they would remain faithful. Verse 8, even their gods with their idols and with their precious vessels of silver and gold, he shall carry off to Egypt the spoils of war. For some years he shall refrain from attacking the king of the north. This is Egypt has taken over Syria, and the bounty was taken to Egypt at that point. I think about even through Joseph back in Genesis. Think through those stories about the bounty of the land, the treasures, the cup, the things that would go back and forth. Is it any wonder that this is still happening, even in this point in our story. Verse 9, then the latter shall invade the realm of the king of the south, but will return to his own land. So Callanus will attack Egypt in 210 BC, but was beaten and returned home. He didn't make any headway either. It feels like these wars have been going on forever, and they have. Obviously, humanity cannot figure this out. Verse 10, his son shall wage war and assemble a multitude of great forces, which shall advance like a flood and pass through, and again shall carry the war as far as his fortress. So there will be more war. War is going to continue. It's going to move on. There will be more and more, no matter what. Verse 11. That's what happens when you're drinking soda. Then you got to burp. Okay, verse 11. Moved with rage, the king of the south shall go out and do battle against the king of the north. He shall muster a great multitude, which shall, however, be defeated by his enemy. Okay, in verse 11, there is a lot of bitterness, obviously, between Egypt and Syria. There is no love loss here. That multitude is probably, they're estimating 75,000. But they've fallen and were defeated into the enemy's hands. Ptolemy IV Philopator devastated the Syrian army under Antiochus III the Great. Now, Egypt has an advantage, maybe briefly, for a moment or two. Look at verse 12. When the multitude has been carried off, his heart shall be exalted, and he shall overthrow tens of thousands, but he shall not prevail. See, great numbers do not make a great army. God's blessing is what's important. God's empowering leaders is what's important. The numbers don't make any difference. Remember, God is behind all this. God's hand is in the midst of what's happening. Verse 13. For the king of the north shall again raise a multitude larger than the former, and after some years he shall advance with a great army and abundant supplies. So Syria will rise and attack again. The king will be very rich at that point. This was for about 13 years. Antiochus now controls Palestine and to the south of Gaza. Gaza of today is where we're talking about. It's amazing to me that battle still goes on. It's still there and present today. I guess maybe we shouldn't be too surprised. Humanity hasn't learned the lessons yet, have we? Humanity has not gotten out of the way and let God be God. No, instead, we continue to try and be God. We try to be in control, even though we can't be. My friends, this night, I do want you to hold the people in Yugoslavia, Ukraine, people in Russia, our people, the people in Sacramento. So many people are hurting in so many places. I ask this night that, yes, we have an abundance of things, maybe, of food, of time. Let us pause. Let us be like Daniel, maybe. Maybe we do have to be having away the wind knocked out of our sails, that we may be humbled so much that we fall down and are speechless to this God of creation. Oh, it seems like right now all we've got is a bunch of war going on. Lands changing, who's in rule, who's in control. The one who's in ultimate control is God. This night, rest, knowing God is present. Know that he is wrapping his arms around you. But my friends, the one thing I know is be passionate about telling the story of Jesus. Be willing to share it to everywhere that you are. Be bold and reckless in telling it. We cannot cower anymore. It is ours to claim. And now, my friends, may God be with you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord look upon you with favor and give you his peace this night, that you may rest. And I hope to see y'all on Wednesday, 7 o'clock right here, or you can come back on anytime and watch us as we talk about the shroud and listen to his voice at the cross. See y'all Wednesday or Sunday at 10 o'clock. See y'all later. Have a great evening, friends.